as we are using the internet or the current network, whenever we are trying to connect or trying to do anything with our system over the network, so there are set of protocols or set of standards are already laid by which we were able to communicate from one point to the other point on the network. Now, in this scenario, whenever we are doing something on the network, so there are two type of protocol architectures are there. The one is OSI layers, and the other practical approach for the same OSI layers is about TCP/IP. So in this session, we'll try to have a brief intro about the OSI or the TCP standards, how these layered approach of the protocols will be helpful in understanding and troubleshooting the various scenarios, or how we can understand the type of the communication that is happening in the network. So whenever we talk about any typical architecture, so this will be the typical architecture that we can actually define, where we have three different type of networks in any organization in a generalized view. The one is the internal network, which is internal to the organization, where we generally refer them to also as LAN or the local area networks. So one part will be the internal networks. Again, in internal networks, there may be one or two, or there may be multiple local area networks that we can also segregate using the different devices, like by placing switches, routers, or internal firewalls. Let's say in this example, the internal network has two different departments. One is finance department, the other one is the production department. So again, these two networks are segregated by using an internal firewall to actually make the traffic what is really required, that has to be flown from one network to the other network. So this is one security aspect of it also. So the other network is called the demilitarized zone or the DMZ zone, where usually the organizational services or the servers are placed. Now, let's say the organization is hosting the email service, web service, or any DNS service. So basically, this server zone will be kept in the other network. And the other network is the internet or the public network, where it may be any of the networks that may be connected, because we don't know what exactly that is there on the internet. So for connecting the organizational network to the internet or the public domain, and also to serve the services that are available on the organizational view or the site, then we have different devices that are placed. Now, let's say, for example, there are multiple systems in this finance department. So all these systems have to be connected onto a single LAN or a single network. Then for this, we are using a finance department switch. Similarly, here we are having a production department with three or more systems. Then again, we need a switch to connect all the systems. Now, there may be another scenario where the finance department, if they want to access the production department, there should be a certain restriction or rules, because both are important departments. So one department cannot access the other department systems or the files, because there are some internal servers also running in each of the departments. So now an internal firewall is used, where this is used to write the rules or any kind of access control list, where we can differentiate the traffic or the kind of restrictions on the traffic from the finance department to the production department. Similarly, there may be another internal networks also in the organization, where these security devices will be used to segregate the traffic. And we also have the different servers in the server farm, where again they are connected to a different switch. Similarly, from the outside or the public internet, usually every organization will be placed with a edge router or a perimeter router, where this is the first point for your entry, or it may be the last point to exit your network out onto the internet, right? So after this, again, a security devices, usually it may be a firewall, or we can have a lot of other security devices also, like we can have intrusion prevention system, we can have intrusion detection system, we can have gateway, antivirus, and we have a lot of other security features that we can actually place it here. So if you see on a broad, usually, or in a generalized view, every organization will have three important networks. The one is the public, or that is connected to the outside world, where we can send the information, or mostly we can say it's a non-trusted environment because we don't know what is exactly there onto the internet. And other two are the trusted zones because they are within the organization. And again, one is actually exposed to the public because we are serving using our servers or the services to the outside public. So we need to have some exposure of these services to the outside world. So we may be restricting now, let's say if I want to host an email server, then I can only select the mail services that need to be hosted onto the public. Again, if I talk about a web server, then I may be only hosting that particular web service onto the public. So according to the need of the organization or according to the services that are provided by the organization, the respective servers are actually exposed to the public. When we talk about the DNS server, it is called as domain name service. As we have seen in the morning session, whenever we type nslookup, the command to, now let's say I want to access cdac.in. Then if I give nslookup space cdac.in, because usually what happens is the system only understand about the IP addresses. The system doesn't understand what is the name, because name is for the human readable format or for our interaction. So in this kind of scenario, the system only understands two type of addresses, where we can observe here. There are only two type of addresses that are associated with the computing system. What are they? The first one is the MAC address. The second one is the IP address. Now, if you have a analogy with the normal kind of scenario where we use our smartphones, so we can have the similar kind of thing, like an IP address may be your mobile number, and the MAC address may be your IMEI number. Because IMEI number is hard coded onto this system, it will not change. But the mobile number can be a virtual address. We can put the SIM in the other mobile number that is carried with the SIM. So it is like a floating address where we can use. Similarly, whenever we talk about the MAC address and IP addresses in the computing system, the MAC addresses are the unique addresses for the system or for the network card. So this address will be unique for each and every system that is there on the LAN or whenever it is manufactured. But whereas the IP addresses are used for communication between the two systems, but it is also like it is not guaranteed that every system has should have only the unique ID. It is again based on the kind of public environments where the public IPs are unique. But whenever we talk about the LANs or the internal systems, again there are some reservations in the IP addresses. Now let's say if I talk about 192.168.1.1, the same IP address can also be used in the other organization, because these set of IP addresses are the network IP addresses are free to use anywhere across the organizations. So this is like a virtual kind of thing. The same IP can also be used to a different system. So it is like a floating address or the virtual address. So whenever we talk about any kind of communication that happens in the computing environment or in the network, that is mostly based on two addressing mechanisms, the MAC address as well as the IP address. Now, this DNS server, so as we the domain names are only for human understanding or the human readable formats. Now let's say this cdac.in, whenever I type in the browser, the system doesn't know what is this cdac.in. So it has to be translated to one of the addressing mechanisms that the system has to understand. Now, whenever we type any domain name, now the DNS server or the domain name service will come into picture. Then it will try to resolve this domain name into the corresponding IP address. So once the IP address is resolved, then the system or the communication start with the corresponding IP address so that we can have the communication between the two systems. So this is the generalized overview of any of the organization. Mostly if we can put it in a generalized format, so this will be the architecture that most of the organizations are used. We have internal networks, we have the DMZ zones or the demilitarized zones where the services are provided. And the other thing is we have the internet or the public network. And in between, we have different kinds of devices that are used. Again, the different devices, because different devices has a different set of features. What is the purpose? Accordingly, we can use a different set of device as per the need. And there are two addressing mechanisms that we have discussed. One is MAC address, the other one is the IP addressing mechanism. What is the DNS if provided by the third party security? Again, sir, actually, it is again, because DNS, it's like a, what we say, it's like a telephone dictionary where the corresponding names and phone numbers, how they are mapped. So every DNS is also have the same kind of database where the domain names as well as the IP addresses of the organizations are mapped. Now, let's say in our organization, we are hosting a website. Our domain is cdac.in. Then we are hosting a website, www.cdac.in. Now, this particular domain name is existing in my organization. But for a person who is sitting in Delhi, let's say we are located at Hyderabad. Now, if they want to access our web server, then this address has to be made into public so that it is also available to the other parties who are in a different part of the world. So similarly, there are again a lot of concept we are going to discuss that DNS in the next sessions, maybe tomorrow. So this will be advertised to all the DNS servers. That is how the ISP DNS is also maintained. So once, let's say my organization have certain records which are to be accessed by the public, then this records will be updated into the ISP DNS server. In turn, this ISP DNS will also share the records which it has with the other ISPs. So this is how all the DNS servers are connected through the zone transfers. So all these records will be updated in all the ISP DNS so that whenever we try to access some website, then the corresponding DNS server will be actually responding with the IP address. So now whenever we talk about the OSI or the Open System Interconnect, then we have 7 layers with respect to the OSI approach or the layered approach we generally call, where whatever the communication that is happening on the network, it is actually a layered approach in terms of 7 layers. So actually the layering starts from the physical layer, but for easy understanding, we'll go from the top layer to the bottom layer. Because when we talk about application layer, this is the layer that is interacted by the user. Let's say the one which you are now viewing is an application. We are using some Cisco WebEx, where as an end user, I am trying to see, I'm trying to view, or I'm trying to communicate using this application. Now, this is the application layer that is responsible for the end user to actually interact. Now, this application layer, it is responsible for providing the network services to the user through various ports. Again, what are the ports? Port is nothing but a service. Now, let's say if I'm using a browser, I'm using a port or a service of web, that is HTTP. If I'm using a secured web, it is HTTPS. So similarly, for each and every service that is associated with a port, port is nothing but a virtual number that is given for a specific site. Now, whenever we talk about the presentation layer, now whatever the data that is coming from the application, now that presentation, because the system doesn't, and if I say an image file, the system doesn't understand what is an image file, because ultimately the system will only try to process in terms of bits and zeros, ones and zeros, that is in bit data. So there should be some kind of layer that actually converts the application data into the corresponding data the system understands. So this presentation layer will be used for converting that data into the standard format that the system understands, or with respect to the application that it understands. Like it may be the ASCII codes, or it may be the JPEG formats, or it may be the encodings or encryptions. So all these formats are handled by the presentation layer. Now, coming to the session layer, this is responsible for establishing, maintaining, terminating the sessions. Sessions in the sense, now let's say I'm trying to open a web request from a client to the server, let's say. Now, during this opening and closing of the session, all this time, the communication has to be in a state that there must be a session has to be established between the two systems for allowing the communication from one host to the other. Now, this is where the sessions will be used, or the session layer will be helpful. And the next one is the transport layer. This transport layer is actually used for end-to-end connectivity. End-to-end connectivity in the sense, all the kind of services that we are talking about, that port numbers will be assigned or used by the transport layer. Now let's say I'm opening a web browser on a client that is connecting to a web server, let's say CDAC.in. Okay. Now this client, on the same client, now let's say as a user, if I open a browser, we are not only opening a single browser as an application. On the same browser, I can open multiple tabs, right? So in one tab, I may be accessing one website, the other tab, I may be accessing other websites. So in a single browser, I can able to access 10 to 15 different websites. Along with this, there again, I may be opening an email application or an Outlook or some other application. I may be opening a video conferencing application. But how the system will actually understand which communication is appropriate or which is destined to a public or to a corresponding application. So that is taken care by the transport layer. So all these services which are invoked, or the services which are coming onto the system, are actually maintained for the end-to-end connectivity using this transport layer. That is where all the multiplexing in the sense, all these different kind of services will be assigned, because the IP address of the system is only one. But this one IP addresses, I may be opening a different kind of services. Now, this kind of multiplexing and demultiplexing will be taken care by the transport layer. Now, after this, we have the other layer called network layer, where the network layer is responsible for the best path for the data to reach the destination through routing protocols and routed protocols. Again, network layer has two functionalities. The one is the path determination, and the other one is the logical addressing. The IP address which we're talking about will be also part of network layer, where we can assign this logical address to the system. And the other important feature of this network layer is also with respect to the path determination. Path determination in the sense, now let's say for a simple analogy, we want to travel from Hyderabad to Delhi. Okay, so to travel from Hyderabad to Delhi or to any other location, there may be multiple paths available. It may be through roadways, it may be through rail network, or it may be through air. So there may be different options, or even through road, there may be 2 or 3 different routes. But what is the best path that is available to actually transfer or to go from one location to other? The similar kind of path determination will be taken care by the routing protocols, where based on the different kinds of routes available at that particular point, the system will try to, or the network layer will try to judge what is the best path that is available at that moment. Because now let's say if to transfer the data from one location to another location, it has to cross a point A, B, and C. These are the 3 different paths. Now let's say the path A is the shortest of all these paths, but suddenly there is a network failure, or there is a cable break, or there is some other natural calamity happen. So even though that is the best path, I cannot use that point at that particular point of time. Why? Because there is no path available, even though it is the best path. Then I have to choose again out of B and C, what is the best path that I can use to deliver the communication. So this all these things will be taken care by the network layer. Then the other thing is called the data link layer, where the physical address or the MAC addressing And also the logical links that are required for the network layer will be determined by this particular layer, where it is responsible for the media access control and also the logical link control. And if there is an error detections also, that will be taken care by the data link layer. And the other part, the last layer, or when we talk in terms of the layered approach, actually the physical layer is the first layer because we have to read it from bottom to top. But for easy understanding, I'm coming from top to bottom. But the first layer is the physical layer. Now, where this is responsible for converting all the data or to transfer all the data that is coming from all the above layers in a format that the system understands, because we all know the system computer understands only ones and zeros. Now, this has to be transferred or transmitted from one location to the other. It may be if we are using the wide network, it may be using the wide kind of thing where it has to electrical signals. And if it is, let's say we are using a wireless devices, then it has to be converted into the corresponding radio signals. So based on the medium or the kind of transfer we have, then accordingly, that will be converted into the respective electrical, mechanical, and the corresponding transformation. And again, when we talk about these two architectures, generally OSI is considered as a theoretical approach to the kind of communication that we have, but the practical implementation will be mostly based on the TCP/IP approach, because out of all these protocols, TCP/IP are considered to be important because that is where most of the applications of the communication is happening. So when we actually convert or find a similarity, then the application, presentation, and session layers in the OSI, they are considered to be as one application layer in the TCP/IP approach. The transport layer remains as it is. The network layer is also as it is. And the data link and the physical layer is considered as the physical layer, but in some text, it is also mentioned as 5 layers, where the data link and physical layer is also separated. Or in generalized, we have 4 layers: application, transport, network, as well as physical. Now, this is how the layered thing will be there in the TCP/IP protocol suite. So as we discussed, the application layer has different kind of application protocols which are responsible for different set of applications. Now, if I talk about the web kind of thing, where I have to understand about the language of hypertext, then I may be using HTTP protocol. Protocol is nothing but the set of rules or where a certain communication can be processed. So if I talk about the file sharing, there is again FTP, or the file transfer protocol. Again, if there is a need for converting the domain name into IP address or the IP address to domain name, then we have this domain name service. Again, if you want to have the FTP without any kind of error detection or without any kind of things, then we have trivial FTP. Then if we talk about the mail communication, again, we have SMTP, or a simple mail transfer protocol. So based on the application and based on the need, we have different set of protocols that are there at the application layer. But again, when we talk about the application layer, the application developers or the kind of applications will be dependent on the transport layer protocols that are being used. So the most widely used transport layer protocols are TCP and UDP. Again, we have a new kind of real-time transport layer protocols are also in the use, but mostly we'll be using TCP and UDP. TCP is a transmission control protocol and UDP is a user datagram protocol. Whenever there is a need for connection oriented, now let's say if I'm using HTTP communication, so I may be using a logging mechanism where there must be a kind of, let's say if I'm trying to download a file. So whenever there is a link break, or if there is a kind of detection of any packet that has been not received by the end user, then again, this download has to be, I mean, whatever the file that has to be sent, it has to be sent without any issues. So for these kind of applications, we use TCP. That means for every packet that is sent, there is an acknowledgement, or there is a kind of flow that will be again responded back to the client. If there is any drop or any kind of miscommunication, then that will be given as the kind of thing to the corresponding client. But whereas in terms of UDP, now let's say the TFTP or the trivial protocol or the DNS protocols, so even there is a drop in the communication, the protocol doesn't again get an acknowledgement or intimate the client that there is a communication gap. It's like one-way kind of thing where it will be continuously sent without any acknowledgement or without any error corrections, right? So based on because some applications need the kind of authentic need the kind of flow control and error detection. Some applications may not be required. So that is how decided based on the kind of applications we use, the transport layer will be used accordingly. And in the network layer or the internet protocol layer, we have again the IP, we have ICMP, and we have IGMP. IP is nothing but the internet protocol layer we anyway have. And the other kind of error mechanism for the IP, we have ICMP, Internet Control Messaging Protocol, and we have IGMP. So these are some of the supporting protocols for the IP, but these protocols will not be carried on to the transport layer protocol. And whenever we talk about the data link layer or the physical layer, we have again two protocols here, ARP and RARP. ARP is generally used for address resolution protocol because most of the communication we receive, it will be based on the IP address. Okay, so even the DNS will try to translate the domain name into IP address only. So this IP address has to be communicated properly with the clients. But on a particular system, now let's say there are 50 systems connected to a LAN or 50 systems connected to a network, the corresponding communication has to be sent onto that particular IP address. But how to pinpoint that particular IP address out of these 50 systems? That means we need to know the unique address of that particular system on the network. So that unique code, the unique address is the MAC address. So there should be some mechanism where the IP address has to be translated into that MAC address. So that is where the ARP protocol will be used at the data link protocol. And whenever we talk about the physical layer, we have Ethernet protocol, where it is responsible for allocating the as well as the sender MAC address, and based on that, the communication will be sent on the physical layer. So this is how the TCP/IP protocol suite is available for communication. Now, this is the overall kind of protocols, because whenever we talk about the protocols at each and every layer, along with the communication, now let's say I open a web browser or I open an email and I type something onto that email. So now this is the actual data that I want to send to the other party. Now, whenever I open this email, then this application, the corresponding from address, corresponding to address, the subject, everything, there are a lot of parameters that that can be associated with that particular application. So this data, whatever the data we are trying to send, now when it crosses that particular layer, along with that layer associated, the corresponding headers will be added to the data. Now, as an application owner, if we can see here, now this is the actual data we are trying to send. Whenever it crosses the application layer, this application header is also added to the data. Now this will become the data to the lower layer. Again, the TCP or the transport layer will add its TCP header, and the network layer will add its IP header. Now this again becomes the data. Then the Ethernet header will also be added. Now this entire thing, which is the data, is sent to the other party. Now, at each and every respective layer, the headers will be decoded by the other party. Then accordingly, it will read the parameters, what exactly the information that is contained, and the corresponding action can be taken. Now, First, the Ethernet header will be seeing what are the parameters that are available. Next, the IP header, next the TCP header, then the application layer, and the actual data in the application will be processed by the end user, right? So this is how the things will be happen. So as we said, this is the data. Now, when it crosses the application header, the application header will be added. That is again called as a data. Now, after transport layer, the transport header will be added. Now, again, it is called data. For this, internet header will be added. Again, this is the data, and the corresponding Ethernet header will be added. So this entire thing will be flown onto the physical layer. Now again, whenever the previous slides, what you have seen is a multiplexing, because we are combining all the data into one single packet. Now, whenever the demultiplexing at the other party, now only the frame is received on the wire. Now, whenever it reaches your NIC card, the Ethernet driver will try to demultiplex based on the frame type. First, it will read the Ethernet header. Then accordingly, it will try to see what is the above layer about it. So whether it is an IP, it is pointing to IP, or whether it is pointing to any layer 2 protocols like ARP or RARP. Then if it is IP again, it may be associated with ICMP or IGMP, or again, it may have some links to the transport layer protocol like TCP or UDP. Now again, based on the TCP or UDP, it is certain links to the corresponding applications on which the packet is encoded or decoded. So accordingly, it will be sent to the corresponding application. So this is how the demultiplexing will be done at each and every layer, reading the header values for the corresponding layer. Then accordingly, the data will be read by the destination. Now, whenever we talk about any client server communication, now let's say as a client, I'm trying to open a web browser. I just wanted to browse one particular website. Now, let's say this is a web browser. I'm trying to connect to a web server. Let's say I'm trying to open a CDAC.in, but I know there is a web server CDAC.in, but as we discussed, we don't know what is the IP address of it, because I cannot simply directly say to the internet or to the ISP that it has to be connected to CDAC.in. So for this, again, I require an other service like DNS or the domain name service, which the first query will be actually sent to the DNS server, okay? Where I am asking the CDAC.in where exactly it is located to the DNS server. Then this DNS server will give the corresponding IP address. Now, the web browser or the client will now connect to this corresponding IP address. And based on that, first, actually the TCP three-way handshake will come, the transport layer. But whenever we talk about the LAN network, once I know the IP address, I also need to send this. Let's say this is a public IP address on which the communication has to be sent. But where exactly this public IP is communicating, or where exactly is located, my system doesn't know. So first what I will do, I will request the gateway where exactly that is contained. So I will send an ARP request. Then the corresponding MAC address will be getting by this ARP reply. Now, once I know the gateway, then the TCP three-way handshake will be happened with the web server. Accordingly, then the corresponding application HTTP request as well as HTTP reply in terms of web page will be visible. So this is how the client server communication will be happening. Then if based on the logout or based on the session timeout, the TCP connection closing will happen. Now, this is one such tool where we'll be demonstrating. It is called Wireshark, where it can be used to actually know whatever that we have discussed. We can have some more elaborate session tomorrow on this Wireshark along with some scanning techniques. But I'll just try to show, because already we are running out of time. So I'll just demonstrate this particular tool, because whatever we have seen in this TCP or the OSI layered approach, that is, it's a theoretical part, but this can be easily visualized using this particular tool, where we can visualize the layered approach, how actually we are dealing with this different kind of layers. For this, all the necessary documentation that is required For installation and for configuration of the Wireshark, everything is provided in the e-learning portal. But still, if someone has any issues in installing or accessing this, then we can discuss on the WhatsApp chat or on the chat box here. So this is the tool window which you are seeing on the Wireshark. This is a packet capturing tool. The main advantage of this, because there are again a lot of packet capturing tools that are available on the market, but why actually we are discussing this thing is, the first thing, it is an open source and freely available for download. And the other thing is, whatever the layered approach that we are talking about, that can be easily visualized using this particular tool. Now, you can see there are a lot of interfaces that we can observe here. So generally, these are the interfaces that are available on the system. So I have 6 or 7 adapters that are available on my particular system on which I'm trying to demonstrate. But here you can see there is a graph that is going on. If we can see there is a graph like ECG kind of thing, then we can observe that there is some generation or the traffic that is flowing on this particular interface. And in the topmost interface, it is like a blank line. That means there is no traffic that is flowing on this wire. Now, let's say we will select this particular interface, just double click on this. Now you can see there is a lot of communication happening. Now, this is what happens in a blink of an eye. Now you can see, if we can install the same tool and observe the kind of traffic in your laptop at home or in an organization, we can see, I mean, because this we will not actually able to put concentration on this kind of traffic. But whenever a system is connected to the LAN or the network, some communication will be happening over this particular interfaces. So this is how we can visualize. Okay, and this red button, I'm just trying to stop this. We'll have more discussion on this Wireshark tomorrow also, but I'll just give you the glimpse of this, how the layered approach will be used. Now let's say, okay, I'll select this one particular packet which have the TCP, or I'll try to look for any kind of application. This is the filter where I can type. Now you can see, whenever I type something wrong, and also there is some keywords are also being displayed here. So what is the correct thing that can be typed? And you can observe the bar is in red. That means whatever we are trying to filter, that is in a wrong way. Now let's say I'm trying to filter the HTTP protocol. Now you can see the bar is turned into green. That means whatever the keyword that I have entered as part of this is correct. Now let's say I'm trying to have this HTTP. I don't have any type of traffic. So what we'll do is, along with Wireshark, I'm just trying to restart it again. Now let's say this is my application. I'm trying to access on google.com. Okay. Why actually we are unable to see HTTP is because google.com and most of the websites are encrypted. So we cannot see HTTPS, but we can see it as a TLS or the HTTPS version. Now let's say this is one application which I've selected, or the application where we can have. So this is the top layer of the application protocol. Now we can see there is some content, or there is some data, or the encryption data. This is the data that I have generated. Now this I have to send over to some communication. Let's say this is my source IP on which I am trying to start the communication, or on which I am trying to open this google.com. Now this is the destination IP of the corresponding web server. And this is the protocol that is being used. Currently we are using TLS, or the transport layer security version 1.2. This is the current SSL version 3 was the older version. After SSL version 3, for HTTPS communication, we have TLS version 1.0, 1.1, and currently we are using 1.2. Okay, and this will give some information on the about the length of the packet. Now this is, let's say this is my data I want to send. Now, as we have seen, after application layer, there is the TCP layer or the transport layer. Now, after this, we can also have some header information regarding what is the source port. Now, what is the destination port? I am trying to access an HTTPS website. So it is the port or the service associated is with port number 443. Now, all this header information of the transport or the TCP, the acknowledgement numbers, the flags, everything is actually embedded here in the transport layer protocol. Now, after this transport layer, I have another layer of IP. So after application and transport, the other layer we have is network layer. So again, on the network layer, we can understand what is the IP address that has been used, it is version 4, any kind of fragmentation is taking place, or what is the time to live. So all this information is having in the header information. And here we can observe this is the source IP address of the client, and this is the destination address of the browser. Now this is the IP addresses, but we need to understand where exactly this system has to be sent onto the LAN. So for this, again, we require some addressing mechanism. Again, it's called ARP or the Ethernet. So where we have what is the destination MAC address and what is the source MAC address. So accordingly, all this information will be converted into the corresponding frame or the corresponding bits where the medium can understand, right? So this is nothing but the frame or 229 bytes on wire. So this many bytes has been converted into the single packet that is sent from one address or one MAC address to the other or one IP address to the other. So this is how this Wireshark is used. As we can see, this is the packet in hexadecimal format that is being sent onto the wire. Okay, but in the layered approach, we are talking about different layers. Now in the second window, this tool will give us what is the layered approach accordingly in terms of easy troubleshooting. Okay, so this is all the layered approach where we can observe. This is the human readable format where we can easily understand, okay, this is the 2632, the packet number, and this is the time at which it has been captured during this time frame, and what is the source IP address, what is the destination IP address, what is the protocol that is being used, and what is the length of the entire frame, and what is the kind of data that is being flown. So this is how it is understandable in a human readable format. So this is how the Wireshark will be used for packet analysis by understanding in three different kind of segments or three different kind of dissections. Okay, so this is about the tool. We'll discuss more onto this Wireshark as well as some other things when we discuss tomorrow as part of this scanning techniques. Okay, so this is how the TCP/IP protocol suite will be used in our day-to-day communication in a layered approach, and we can use one particular tool of Wireshark for this for easy demonstration and to understand the layered approach. So any kind of doubts with respect to this lecture, then we can discuss here. How safe is DMZ and open port behind a firewall? Actually, generally, we use the security devices like firewall to open a specific ports. Like, let's say, as we have seen in the previous slide, on one of the server, we are trying to expose it to the public, but that has to go through a firewall, because even though there are different kinds of ports that are available on the server, that particular service, let's say I'm trying to host, host this particular web service onto the public. So generally web service is nothing but it is associated with port number 80 or 443. But there may be again a lot of other services that are running on the system. But for the public, I am only intended to allow only a specific port. So for this, what I will do, we'll use a security device like firewall. On this firewall, we allow only a particular port number 80 or 443 out of all the available services on the particular server. So in this case, we can say that this particular DMZ or this network is only allowed to allow a specific kind of port onto a specific server. Again, this particular port is only associated to a, let's say there is a web server, there is an email server, there is a DNS server again. So this port number 80 is only allowed onto the web server only, not onto the SMTP server or the mail server, because again, mail server port is 25. Again, this 25 is only associated to the mail server. But Not only firewall, we'll again come to discuss a lot of there are security features along with firewall. Firewall is the basic security device or security parameters we can use. But along with this, there may be some traffic that is coming onto the server on port 80 and 443. That means along in the normal communication, the firewall can only see whether port 80 or 443 is allowed. But what is the content, whether it is malicious or any kind of attack that is coming again, there is a different kind of scenarios. We use IPS, IDS, and there are a lot of security features which we'll be discussing in the coming sessions also. So this is how the DMZ can be protected by allowing only specific ports to a specific IP address of a server using the firewalls. Is it clear, sir, or still any questions? Okay. So are there still any questions, sir? This is because we keep the ports open for scientific data. Yes, sir. Actually, this is where the ports are to be restricted. That is where, if we talk about the generalized view of the architecture, also what we have discussed, there are again different networks onto which even in the internal networks also we may be using internal firewalls, because even there may be, let's say if you talk about some kind of defense labs or any kind of production environment where there is a sensitive data, even one department data is sensitive to the other departments also. So that is where even we can restrict these two departments using an internal firewalls, not only the external firewalls which you use as an organization level. We can also go for internal firewalls also, where we can restrict from one department or one network to the other network also. Even on the routers we can write access control list, even on the devices we can write this kind of data. So that is how we can segregate. But still, as I said, not only this ports, we can also discuss a lot more in terms of security and how actually we can, because there may be attacks, there may be security features, again a lot of other security parameters, there may be some application related to web, that also we'll discuss in the coming sessions for more kind of understanding. Naresh, can we wind up or can we wait for any queries further?
No queries. If queries are there,
Yeah.
We'll wind
Yes,
up.
sir. Actually, it is not that this chat window or the session is only available till this point of time. Anyway, we have created a separate WhatsApp group for all the participants. Still, if you have any queries with respect to that, you can post that queries at any point of time in the WhatsApp group, so that we can reply accordingly to the concern.